Really weird. How was your trip to wherever you've been for the past few months? Touring the breweries? Oh, it went really well, actually. Have you seen the demonstration videos? These aircraft are going to revolutionize aerial combat. Yes, I did. Come to think of it, I ought to review it. Yukikaze. It'll be great. Hiya, I'm Mike, Penguin Truth, and this is Otaku Evolution, which is somewhere between Lamarckian and Darwinian, though most of us don't pass our traits on because we can't get a date. The gene pool sends me a Christmas basket every year. Delicious gingerbread. Today I'll be looking at an OVA that, much like Area 88, revolves around a fighter pilot fighting in desperate circumstances in a far-off land. Based on two novels by Chōhei Kambayashi, Yukikaze combines high-flying aerial action with science fiction elements and a unique framing device. It must have been frustrating to follow it as it was originally released, though. 5 episodes over 3 years. Kind of reminds me of Gundam Unicorn. Or Hellsing Ultimate. Or... The background of the story is that aliens have opened up a passage from their planet to ours in Antarctica, which they began to invade us through, but Earth's militaries have pushed them back to their planet, which humans have now followed them to finish off the war. Most of the action of the series takes place on the alien planet, which is named... Fairy! It's Fairy! Planet Fairy! Sorry about that. Very immature. But come on, Planet Fairy? Oh, and the enemy is called the Jam. The Jam from Planet Fairy. And the human military force based on it is called the Fairy Air Force. So clearly it was the humans who gave the name Fairy to the planet. That's pretty petty. Who came up with that? President Trump? Mr. President, we don't know what to call these alien invaders. I told you not to bother me at breakfast. But sir, call them, Jam. The Jam. Sir, that's a little silly. Of course it's silly, they're losers. If they were winners, like me, they'd be from Earth instead of, Planet, Fairy. Planet Fairy? Yeah, bunch of losers named Jam from Planet Fairy. We'll make the place a luxurious resort planet. It'll be fabulous. High class. Best thing since Trump Steaks, Trump the Game, and Celebrity Apprentice, which were all huge. I was in Home Alone too, you know.
Master, may I stop bringing you drinks? You have a whole bottle and...
Shut up, you. You'll do as you're told or be fired. Into North Korea. Bunch of losers. Yeah, I really don't do impressions. That Trump sounded a bit more like Bernie Sanders. Our main protagonist is Second Lieutenant Rei Fukai, fighter pilot in the Fairy Air Force. He's withdrawn, eschewing most social interaction except with his CO, and has a strange mental machine connection between himself and his plane via the advanced AI called Yukikaze. He seems to only find comfort in flying, making him a really weirdly obsessed guy, and frankly, a little flat as a character at times. He's sort of like Isamu Dyson from Macross Plus, if he didn't have the charm. Frankly, it seems like the Yukikaze system seems to do most of the heavy lifting. We even start the story with Rei taking down an unidentified copy of his super sylph plane that the AI says is the enemy. No military jets were missing, so it's possible that it's right. But hey, there's no time to speculate on whether the aliens can replicate our technology, or whether Rei has murdered a friendly because a computer told him to. It's time to go grocery shopping as Rei spends some time with his superior and really, really good buddy. This is Major James Jack Buchar, Rei's boss and, well, let's just say it, possible love interest. The two spend an inordinately lengthy amount of time baring their souls to each other, bickering, exchanging meaningful, longing looks, and caring for each other in a way that definitely goes past professional interest. I'm not saying they're definitely a couple, but there sure is a lot of baiting. You get the feeling that these two are incredibly important to each other. Maybe with some romantic feelings. Honestly, Jack comes off more interesting than Rei, struggling to understand the pilot's connection with Yukikaze and the suspicions of other military officers, including his own superior. When Rei goes missing in the first episode, captured by the jam, it's Jack that is desperate to locate him, emotionally distraught and frustrated by his CO's dismissiveness.
File a report on the matter. Oh, and drink a hot cup of coffee.
Speaking of the jam, one of the oddities in the series is that we never really see them. We see the vessels they use to communicate with humans now and then, such as when they appear as deceased soldiers to lure Rei into a false sense of security to get information from him. They're not just capable of replicating people, but also technology, and seem desperate to keep up with the humans in the arms race. So perfect are their people clones, it's almost impossible to tell unless you already knew that person was dead. That's used pretty cleverly in the third episode, but we'll get to that in a little bit. I want to talk a little bit more about Yukikaze, because even though it's a non-speaking, non-human plot device, it might be the most useful and judicious character in this OVA. I guess that speaks volumes about the human characters, but it also shows how incredible the AI is. It can detect the presence of jam flawlessly, and even seems to get more intelligent as time passes, especially after the destruction of the Super Sylph and it's transferred to the FRX-99 MAV. We don't really get any background as to who programmed the AI or how it was developed, but by the end of the OVA, you almost expect it to evolve into a fully sapient being and fly into space looking to make life. And as I said, Rei is always a couple of steps away from becoming one with the machine.
Has he lost his mind? Stop!
Rei.
There.
At one point, there's talk of replacing human pilots entirely with AI like Yukikaze. I'd make a stealth reference, but who even saw that movie? I'll save Macross Plus for another time, like when I'm plastered enough to endure that English dub. There are other characters aside from Ray and Jack, by the way. After recovering from a catatonic state, Ray is assigned a therapist for profiling and counseling, Edith Foss. At first, she's just irritating to Ray, who wants to concentrate on his work with Yukikaze, and meanwhile, she's flabbergasted by his indifference to her feminine charms. Oddly enough, they even send her up in the air with Ray in the FRX to observe him during battle. Something I would not have recommended if she wasn't a ranked captain, and may have had some flight experience. Things get a little dicey, but she manages to survive.
Unit 3. Transferring 1 casualty to the medical center. ETA 7.
After some time, she even begins to diagnose the Yukikaze and the Jam as a collective force.
Seems to be afraid of something.
Do you mean Tom?
No, Yukikaze.
A war between the Jam and our machines.
Don't they have other people to do these things? I really hope she's getting overtime. Speaking of busy women, the framing device of the anime is that the events are being chronicled by a journalist named Lynn Jackson, who wrote a book based on what she learned about the war with the Jam. She even meets Ray and Jack when they come through the gateway back to Earth to retrieve an upgrade for the FRX's engines.
That fool, he's coming in too high! He's too fast!
Talking to Ray, she muses over her first experience learning about the Jam as a child, during Christmas time, and how it seems like everybody on this side of the gateway has forgotten about the war. Honestly, she doesn't really contribute a lot to the central narrative. It could just as easily have been combined with a doctor character who could be writing the book broadly to leave out classified information. I feel like they really don't give either of these characters enough to do, and they seem like merely accoutrements to the narrative. I can't help thinking that if this was a longer series, they'd have time to fully flesh them out. Before I forget, I want to get back to what I was mentioning before about the Jam's cloning abilities, which are demonstrated well in episode 3. In it, Ray and an engineer, Tom John, are sent after a flying fortress that has gone out of control, attacking friendlies with no response. Tom John explains that he's a Native American who was upsetting a warrior lineage with his aversion to fighting, despite being in the FAF. When they board the fortress, called the Banshee, Ray stumbles onto a possible cloning factory for the Jam to copy humans. What's more, the Yukikaze continues to identify Tom John as a Jam. The man finally realizes, to his own shock, that he is a Jam and didn't even know it. The real Tom John had been taken after going missing and returned as a clone. The clone, having gotten to like Ray, sacrifices his life to help him escape.
I can't go on living with a heart like ice forever.
Heavy, man. At first glance, the episode seems like a distraction from the main narrative. Nothing really goes on during it that leads to the Jam's defeat in the end. But it's a really thematically well-constructed entry. The irony of the technician Tom John hailing from a bloodline of warriors and being uncomfortable with that, only for his clone to die heroically, for him to not know until now that he infiltrated the humans. This is all a chilling reminder of the Jam's increasing efficiency in replicating humans, whether to examine or to sabotage, or both. Thinking back to it, it might be my favorite episode. I'm not exactly sure if there's supposed to be a critical social commentary on the military-industrial complex or not, but we do discover that the FAF has basically shunted off soldiers to ferry to occupy the planet, and have stayed there well after the war has largely subsided. It almost seems like the only reason the Jam attack at this point is that the humans continue to occupy, and while initially the occupation may have been justified given the Jam's attack, at this point it all seems pretty pointless, and the military just seems to be using this as an opportunity to test out new weapons. The actual motivation of the Jam is a bit more, shall we say, alien, however, and isn't revealed until the FAF decide to pull out entirely and return to Earth in the final episode. The trick that the FAF pull off to fool the Jam in order to retreat is pretty amazing, and the aliens return in kind by unveiling that the entirety of the planet Fairy has a very special nature to it. I won't reveal everything because I think you ought to really experience this anime and judge the ending yourself. Honestly, the main reason I wanted to review this thing? Those amazing aerial combat scenes. The detail put into the action and the design of the aircraft is reason alone for seeing all 5 episodes. And the second Yukikaze fighter ray pilots, the Mauve, is one of my favorite fictional aircraft.
Somebody get recovery in the water! Did you see that? I need help! Get back! It's incredible.
Look at this thing in action. Its sleekness, its movement, and especially because it's piloted by Rei, a savant, and has the Yukikaze AI, it's probably the greatest weapon in the whole of the FAF. The mechanics behind it are probably ultimately nonsense, but I'd put it against any mid-tier powered mecha in anime, and bet it would perform pretty well. And the fighter Rei piloted at the beginning was no slouch either, and would probably be much easier to mass produce. No wonder the military seized the opportunity to make Fairy their test field. These planes are works of art. But the OVA is not without its drawbacks. There seems to be a disconnection between the characters and the plot development, like there isn't enough of the former driving the latter. The narrative just sort of moves along with the characters dragging behind, as if they were off in their own separate journey. It makes the anime seem a tad sterile at times. It feels like some elements of the plot could have been fleshed out a little better if this had been a TV series. A phrase I find myself saying a lot lately.
I don't know how long we can stay ahead of the Jam's predictions. But while we can, the war will never end. Humanity can survive. That is all.
But hey, it wasn't even close to as dreadful as I'd been led to believe, say by a popular anime podcast I usually agree with. Different strokes, I guess. I enjoyed the premise, the action, and some of the character moments. It is a tad shallow overall, and I'm hardly clamoring for a license rescue, but it wasn't a waste of time. Anyway, that's enough for Otaku Evolution this week. Join me next time as I take a look at an anime based off of a Masamune Shiro manga. And no, it isn't Ghost in the Shell, or Tank Police, or Appleseed, or, you know what, it's Black Magic M66, okay? Until then, see ya!
Yukikaze. Let's go.
You know, it's funny. When I was out east for the tests, I stopped by Japan. Yeah, actually, I went on a studio tour of Gainax, like the old days. Well, there's the funny thing. When I mentioned you, they had no idea what I was talking about. They said there is no real Pen. Thing about that is, I went to Studio Kara too, and they've never seen you either. I mean, the real you. Well, I guess that makes sense. Well, I'm certainly not buying it.